You would think that freedom feels like sunshine streaming in after the storm has passed, or warmth returning to your skin after a long winter. You would think that when the chaos ends, you would exhale with relief and feel something like peace. But often you don't. Instead, it is quiet, too quiet, a quiet that hums like a vacuum around your heart. It has no comfort, no song, no softness, just stillness, like a room no one has entered in years. And the strange part is, it doesn't hurt. Not in the way you're used to. It doesn't sting or rage. It just echoes. It feels like something is missing. And the mind tries to name that missing piece. It says, maybe it was them. Maybe it was the bond. Maybe I made a mistake. But that's not what's missing. What's missing is the war. The daily negotiations for your worth. The silent calculations of how much of yourself you were allowed to express. The tension in your chest as you waited to be dismissed, criticized, blamed, ignored. The constant sense of needing to explain yourself to someone who never really wanted to understand. The survival choreography you mastered just to stay connected. All of that, gone. So what fills the space? Nothing. And that is why it feels so strange, because you have lived a long time reacting, responding, bending and twisting to avoid punishment or earn crumbs of affection. That becomes your rhythm, the background hum of your nervous system. And when it stops, you do not feel at home. You feel lost. But you are not lost. You are unoccupied for the first time. This is not grief for a person. This is the body and soul adjusting to the sudden absence of what used to take up all your space. And it's more than emotional. It is biological. Your brain has spent years in alert mode, responding to stress, reconfiguring your identity around keeping the peace or avoiding the next explosion. And now that it's quiet, your brain is still scanning, still waiting, still trying to locate a danger that no longer exists. It is a strange kind of dissonance, like a phantom limb of the psyche. So if you are sitting in that space, unsure of what to feel, unsure of who you are or what to do next, let this be your reminder. This emptiness is not a failure. It is a reset. The quiet you feel now is not peace yet, but it is the beginning of it. It is like the early morning before the world has woken up, that strange soft time when everything feels uncertain. Because nothing is demanding your energy anymore. There is no performance, no mask, just you. And that might be the scariest part, because for a long time, the only version of you that felt safe was the one adapted to pain, the one who could explain away the cruelty, justify the distance, romanticize the dysfunction. That version of you served a purpose, but now that it's no longer needed, what is left? Stillness. And that stillness is sacred. It is the place where seeds are planted, where identities are chosen instead of inherited, where presence becomes possible. But that doesn't mean it feels good right away. It may feel boring, lonely, useless, or raw. The nervous system doesn't know how to interpret stillness without panic. So it might tell you something is wrong, that you should go back, that at least the chaos had meaning, movement, something to react to. That voice is lying. It is the leftover voice of your survival self, the one who thought love meant struggle, the one who equated stimulation with connection, the one who learned to confuse intensity with intimacy. That self is grieving right now. And grief is not linear. It moves in waves. Some days you will feel powerful. Other days you will feel small. Both are part of the release. Let it be slow. Let yourself be a beginner in this new reality. You have not failed because you feel empty. You have simply entered the part of healing that rarely gets talked about. The part with no milestones, no visible transformation. Just internal shifting. Just quiet. Sometimes the deepest spiritual work happens in these invisible seasons, when no one is watching, when no one is validating, when you are simply breathing through the fog of your own past, trying to remember who you were before you forgot. You may be tempted to rush into the next thing, a new relationship, a new project, a new version of you that feels more defined. But pause and remember. Anything built too quickly upon this void will be built from old patterns. This is the space where your roots can grow differently, where you begin to ask questions not from pain, but from possibility. What do I need now that I am not needed by dysfunction? What do I want now that I am not surviving? What am I allowed to feel now that I am no longer afraid? Let these questions hover. You do not have to answer them yet. This episode, this part of your becoming, is not about conclusions, it is about spaciousness. And in that space, you are allowed to rest, to unravel, to soften. You are not doing nothing, you are healing without noise. And that, beloved listener, is something holy. There is a moment in healing that catches many off guard. It arrives quietly, like everything else in this strange space after release. You may be doing something simple, washing a dish, looking at your reflection, sitting in bed at night, and you notice it. You do not know who you are anymore. Not in a dramatic existential crisis kind of way, but in a quiet, deeply personal way that leaves you blinking at the mirror with a soft ache in your chest. You think, who am I when I am not explaining, pleasing, or defending? Who am I when no one is there to react to? This question is heavier than it first appears, because most of us, especially those who've endured long-term toxic dynamics, built our sense of self in contrast to others. You may have shaped yourself around someone else's moods, needs, neglects, or punishments. You became the responsible one, the quiet one, the funny one, the one who didn't ask for too much, the one who was easy to be around, or the one who fought back, who never stopped resisting. But either way, you became someone in response to something that wasn't safe. And now it's over. Now the air around you holds no accusation, no tension, no manipulation, just stillness. So what happens to your identity when it no longer has anything to push against? At first, it may feel like being adrift, like a planet that has lost its gravitational center. There's a strange sensation of floating, of watching your thoughts and behaviors with a detached curiosity, wondering, was that ever really me? You might revisit decisions, habits, styles, even relationships, and feel a sudden shift. Not because anything external changed, but because you no longer need to use them as armor. This is what happens when healing begins to rewrite the core. You stop needing to prove your goodness. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop performing to avoid being abandoned. And in the absence of all those reactions, a very quiet truth begins to emerge. You were never that persona. You were never the survival strategy. You were always the one beneath it. But it takes time to meet that version of you, because for so long you associated safety with performance. You became skilled at predicting others' emotions. You preempted arguments. You dissolved your preferences. And for what? Not because you were weak, but because you were wise. You sensed, often without words, what kept things from exploding. And now, without that tension, your gifts can feel like burdens. You wonder what to do with all that awareness, all that care, all that attentiveness that once kept you protected. This is where you begin the most important part of reclaiming yourself. You turn those gifts inward. The attentiveness becomes self-attunement. The emotional radar becomes inner listening. The care you once extended outward at your own expense becomes sacred devotion to your own well-being. This is not selfish. This is restoration. But be gentle. It can feel mechanical at first. You may find yourself asking, do I even like this, or did I learn to like it because they did? You might try on different ways of being, styles, voices, boundaries, and feel like you're pretending. That is part of the process. You are learning to live from essence instead of reaction. That will always feel unfamiliar at first. You may also notice guilt rising. Guilt for not being who you once were. Guilt for not responding to people the way they expect. Guilt for taking up more space, needing more silence, or changing your mind. This is residue from the old self, the one who survived by staying small. Let it speak, but do not obey it. That guilt is not the voice of your soul. It is the voice of a life lived in reaction, a life shaped by unpredictability and the need to earn love through suppression. But you are allowed to disappoint old versions of yourself in service of truth. You are allowed to confuse others by becoming more whole. You are allowed to reintroduce yourself to the world without needing a title, a defense, or a clean backstory. You are allowed to be in progress. In this in-between space, where the old self has crumbled, but the new self has not yet fully formed, it is easy to mistake emptiness for absence. But this is not absence. This is emergence. The same way the moon is still there during the day, even when you cannot see it, you are still here. You are simply becoming visible again. It may help to ground yourself in small, gentle truths, not roles, not traits, but truths. Like, I am allowed to take my time. I am someone who listens. I am someone who notices beauty. I am someone who rests. These may seem like simple things, but they are the foundation of identity that is no longer based on how well you survive someone else's mistreatment. They are not reactive, they are generative. They come from within, and they are yours. This space you're in now, this strange, soft void, is not the end of your story. It is the moment the ink touches the page again. Only this time, it is your hand holding the pen, your breath choosing the rhythm, your heart deciding which words matter. You are not missing. You are emerging. And the more you let yourself unfold without explanation, the more your true self will reveal itself in unexpected ways. Through laughter that surprises you, through silence that soothes you, through choices that honor the life you want to live, not the life you had to endure. So take your time. No one is rushing you. No one is measuring your pace. This is your reintroduction to yourself, and you are allowed to meet who you are becoming without needing to explain who you were. It might sound strange to say that you could miss the very thing that hurt you, that a part of you could long for the person, the place, the pattern that once held you captive. But healing is rarely clean, and grief, more than anything, is honest. There is no shame in missing the mess, even if it cost you your clarity, even if it made you question your worth, even if it bruised your nervous system over and over. It was still what you knew. It was the rhythm of your days, the shape of your identity, the structure your emotions revolved around. And now, in its absence, there is an ache. You are not mourning a person. You are mourning the version of you that lived inside that dynamic, the one who was always alert, the one who knew how to smooth things over, the one who always had an emotional contingency plan. That version of you was exhausting, yes, but also familiar. And now that she is no longer needed, now that she is stepping down, there is a quietness that feels unnatural, like something has been amputated. But it wasn't a limb, it was the chaos. And chaos, as terrible as it was, gave you a role to play. It gave you something to fix, something to decode, something to chase. It made your days full, even if they were full of tension. It gave your mind 1,000 puzzles to solve, even if those puzzles were impossible. It created motion. And motion, even when it is running in circles, can feel like purpose. That is what you're grieving now. Not the harm, not the pain, but the momentum. The strange kind of momentum that made you feel alive, through intensity, through confrontation, through emotional highs and lows that left your heart disoriented but alert. You were always doing something, always tending to someone else's wounds, always managing someone else's energy, always strategizing how to keep the connection alive. And now there is no strategy left, no management, no saving, just air. And it can feel so empty, that air. It can feel wrong, even when you know it's right. Because trauma imprints itself not just in memory, but in sensation. Your body remembers the adrenaline, the cortisol, the charge of trying to be good enough, the ache of being dismissed, the thrill of being briefly adored. And so the nervous system, trying to calibrate to this new silence, sends signals that something is off, that something must be fixed, that maybe you were safer inside the storm, because at least you knew where the edges were. At least you knew what to expect. But those are not true thoughts. They are withdrawal symptoms. Yes, withdrawal. You are detoxing from chaos, and that detox is not just emotional, it is neurological. Your brain has been conditioned by the patterns of hypervigilance. Your system became accustomed to constant emotional stimulation. And now, without it, your body may interpret calm as danger, because it does not yet know how to rest in peace without anxiety. So you grieve. You grieve what was, even if it was harmful. You grieve what it cost you. You grieve how much of your identity was built in response to it. And grief, though it can feel heavy, is not weakness. It is the soul catching up to the truth. It is your inner being processing the loss of a known world, even if that world was hurting you. This grief does not mean you want to go back. It means you are healing honestly. You are allowing yourself to feel without filtering. You are telling the truth about how much effort it took to survive, and how strange it feels to no longer have to try. There may be days when the silence feels unbearable. When you find yourself replaying moments of the past, imagining what you could have said differently, or mourning the good memories that were real, even if they were brief, this is normal. It is not regression, it is integration. Let those feelings move through you. Let the tears come, even if they make no sense. Let your body shake if it needs to. Let the ache speak without rushing to silence it. Because beneath the grief is something sacred, something incredibly brave. It is the truth that you were real in a false connection, that you loved deeply in a space that could not hold it, that you showed up with your whole heart in a place that only wanted parts. And now, you are learning to be whole again. That wholeness will not come from bypassing this grief. It will come from sitting with it, from allowing it, from listening to it like an old friend who's trying to help you remember something important, like the fact that you never needed to earn love through chaos, like the fact that your depth was never too much. It was simply given to someone who could not hold it. Like the fact that the version of you shaped by survival was stunning, but now it is time for something new. Let yourself miss it. Let yourself mourn it. Let yourself feel strange and unfinished, because that is how healing unfolds, not in straight lines, but in spirals. And every spiral has a point where it feels like you are back where you started, but you are not. You are circling from a higher place, from a deeper awareness, from a heart that is slowly, gently remembering its own rhythm apart from dysfunction. You are grieving the noise, but you are also making room for stillness. You are releasing the roles, but you are also reclaiming your truth. And in time, this grief will not feel like emptiness. It will feel like clarity, like relief, like space. And into that space, something new will grow, something real, something that does not depend on chaos to feel alive. There comes a point in healing when the silence stops being dramatic and starts being steady. And strangely, that's when it gets harder, not easier, because at first, the silence is shocking. It feels unnatural. It feels like something is missing. But eventually, the mind stops protesting. The emotions settle. The ache softens. And what remains is quiet. A quiet that doesn't echo with grief or tension. A quiet that simply is. For many people, this is the hardest place to stay. Because silence, when you've lived in chaos, can feel like absence, like nothing is happening, like life has paused and forgotten to press play again. And in a culture addicted to movement, progress, and constant stimulation, stillness can feel like failure. But it is not failure. It is invitation. This part of your healing is where depth begins to form, where space becomes sacred, where you are no longer reacting, rebuilding, grieving, or surviving. You are simply being. And for a nervous system trained by trauma, that might feel unbearable. Because here's the truth. When all the noise is gone, the only thing left to face is yourself. No conflict to manage, no emotional storm to navigate, no invisible threat to anticipate, just your own breath, your own thoughts, your own presence. And that can be terrifying. Not because there's anything wrong with you, but because you've rarely been alone with your inner life without needing to filter it for someone else, without adjusting it to keep the peace, without scanning it for flaws before it gets weaponized. To sit in quiet is to meet yourself without agenda. And that is deeply vulnerable. It means watching emotions rise without rushing to distract from them. It means noticing how often your mind looks for someone to fix, something to do, somewhere to go. It means feeling urges to perform or produce, and choosing not to obey them. It means learning how to exist without a script. This space is not glamorous. It is not shareable. It will not impress anyone. But it is holy. Because it is here, in the absence of reaction, that truth begins to whisper. You start to notice what you like, not what you were told to like or what was safe to like, but what genuinely lights something inside you. You start to notice how your body feels when you're not performing. You start to catch glimpses of a rhythm that is slow, grounded, and real. But it takes time. This kind of quiet is not comfortable at first. It may bring up restlessness. You may feel the urge to pick a fight with yourself, to stir something up emotionally, just so you can feel something intense again. You may notice how silence reveals the parts of you that were buried under all the noise. Your fear, your longing, your loneliness, your softness, all of it comes up in the quiet. Not because you are doing anything wrong, but because you are finally safe enough for it to emerge. And in that emergence, you will be tempted to flee, to busy yourself, to fill the space with something, anything. But this time, try staying just a little longer. Let the quiet stretch. Let it hold you. Let it become less alien and more familiar. Because this space, though it feels empty, is where your spirit begins to breathe again. It is where your heart uncoils. It is where your mind stops rehearsing defenses and starts noticing beauty. It is where you remember what it feels like to be without pressure. And yes, it can feel boring. It can feel unimportant. It can feel slow. But boredom, too, is a teacher. It tells you how often you relied on stimulation to feel alive. It shows you where you confused chaos for purpose. It invites you to notice the tiny, quiet joys that never had a chance to speak before, like the way light moves across a room, the way your shoulders drop when you realize no one is judging you, the way your breath deepens when no one is taking up your attention. These are not small things. These are sacred things, and they only appear in the quiet. This is where presence lives. Not in grand declarations or dramatic healing breakthroughs, but in the gentle choosing of stillness over and over until it becomes your home. You do not need to fill this space. You do not need to perform worthiness. You are allowed to just be. You are allowed to sit in a room and feel whatever you feel without naming it, fixing it, or judging it. You are allowed to exist without proving. You are allowed to experience peace, even if it feels strange. And over time, the quiet will stop being a void. It will start to feel like ground. Not the shaky kind that trauma gave you, not the conditional kind that chaos demanded, but the solid, rooted kind that comes from being fully with yourself. Not running, not distracting, not needing to be anything more than you are. Just this. Just now. Just being. So if today you find yourself in that kind of quiet, the kind that feels empty or useless or hard to name, know this. You are not wasting time. You are not falling behind. You are not disappearing. You are healing in a way that cannot be rushed. And this quiet, this is your new soil. The roots are forming. You just cannot see them yet. Something strange happens when you are no longer living for someone else's gaze. At first, it feels like freedom, and then it feels like confusion. Because for a long time, your choices, your tone, even your posture might have been unconsciously calibrated to the presence of another. Someone who needed you to be a version of yourself that was digestible, impressive, or small enough to control. And once that presence is gone, so too is the feedback loop that told you who to be. So what do you do when there's no one to impress, no one to protect yourself from, no one to decode or entertain or placate? You start to live without an audience. And at first, that can feel like invisibility. It can feel like you disappeared because your identity had been built in contrast, in reflection, in response. But this is not erasure. This is emergence. And it does not require performance. In fact, it requires the opposite. To truly become, you have to stop performing. You have to let go of the identity you curated to be loved, accepted, or safe. The smile that hid exhaustion. The competence that kept you from asking for help. The forgiveness that was expected long before your heart was ready to offer it. The humor you used as armor. The quiet you wore like camouflage. It's easy to think those things were you, but they were costumes. Beautiful ones. Necessary even. But they were built for survival, not for becoming. Now that the survival moment has passed, the costumes are heavy. They no longer fit. They pinch in places you can finally feel, and you may start to notice how often you still reach for them, even when no one's watching. Out of habit, out of muscle memory, out of fear that without them, you might disappear completely, but you won't. What disappears is the illusion. What remains is truth. Becoming without performing means you let yourself feel unsure. You let your sentences trail off. You allow space for opinions to evolve. You dress for comfort instead of approval. You say no without explaining. You cry without apologizing. You listen to your body's fatigue instead of overriding it with guilt. It also means doing things for yourself, even when no one will know. Like cooking something beautiful just because it nourishes you. Like writing a page you don't plan to share. Like walking in the quiet without headphones. Like tending to the parts of you that don't get praised. There is a quiet kind of dignity in these things. a depth that no validation can create. Because for the first time, you are not editing yourself for someone else's narrative. You are listening to what feels true in the moment and trusting that it's enough. This is the essence of selfhood. Not the story others tell about you, not the role you've learned to play, but the raw, unpolished reality of your own presence. It's messy sometimes. You might stumble over words, you might feel less impressive, less sharp, less together, but you'll feel something else too, something better. A kind of peace that doesn't depend on applause. A kind of confidence that isn't fragile. A sense of worthiness that does not rise or fall with others' approval. This is the heart of real becoming. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need a resume. It doesn't even need a plan. It just needs permission. Permission to try things and not be good at them. To rest when nothing is wrong. To change your mind. To unlearn excellence as your identity. To say yes because you want to, not because you're afraid to say no. You are allowed to exist without performing recovery. You are allowed to heal without narrating every step. You are allowed to enjoy your life without explaining how hard it used to be. Let this be your quiet rebellion. Not against others, but against the old pressure to make your becoming visible and impressive. It does not have to be either. It can be subtle, it can be slow, it can be mostly private. Because your worth is not in how inspiring your story is. It is in your breath, your being, your choice to stay soft in a world that tried to harden you. You don't have to do anything spectacular to justify your healing. You are not a project. You are not a performance. You are a presence, and that is enough. When you learn to live without performing, you begin to feel life from the inside out instead of the outside in. You begin to sense your own rhythm, your own voice, your own strange and beautiful needs. You begin to move at a pace that makes sense to you, not one inherited from those who didn't understand you. It is not always easy. There may be days when you miss the predictability of performing. There may be moments when you want to slip back into the roles that used to win you love. But love that requires performance is not love. It is a transaction. And you were made for more. You were made to be known, not just seen. To be felt, not just observed. To be held, not just praised. Let that be enough today. Not the old mask, not the old role, not the performance. Just you, here, now, breathing in your own presence. Learning that you do not have to do anything to deserve your own care. You are allowed to become, quietly. And that quiet is sacred. There's a moment in the silence when something finally clicks. Not loudly, not all at once, but gently. Like a shift in the wind. You are sitting in the quiet again, maybe on a floor, or in your car, or lying in your bed where the dark feels thick and the stillness feels endless. And for the first time, you notice something. You are still here. You are still breathing, and nothing is wrong. The grief may still ripple through you. The confusion may still surface. But the chaos is gone. And what has taken its place is not emptiness. It only looked like emptiness because you were used to being occupied by noise, by demands, by fear, by the constant call to keep proving, performing, fixing, or surviving. Now that space is clear, and at first it frightened you. It made you think something had gone wrong, that something had been lost. But nothing essential was lost. What was lost was the illusion that your life had to be filled with someone else's noise to mean something. You are not lost. You are unoccupied for the first time. Let that land. You are not being punished by stillness. You are being trusted with it, trusted to inhabit your own life fully, trusted to explore without scripts, trusted to be real instead of reactive. This is not a void to escape. It is a sanctuary being revealed. For the first time in a long time, you are standing inside a version of your life that has not yet been claimed by dysfunction. It may feel plain, it may feel quiet, it may feel slow. But that is only because your senses are adjusting. They are recalibrating after years of stimulation, bracing, and hypervigilance. You are detoxing from what you thought was connection, but was actually control. This sacred unoccupied space is the truth of your freedom. No longer defined by someone else's needs, no longer orbiting someone else's volatility, no longer shaped by manipulation disguised as love. And that means you get to decide what lives here now. Not in a rush, not in a flurry of reinvention, but slowly, naturally, through curiosity, not urgency. You get to ask, without panic, what do I want to feel like when I wake up? What do I want to hear when I am alone? What does home feel like when no one else is setting the rules? You might not have answers yet. That is okay, because this moment is not about knowing, it is about noticing. Noticing the way your breath settles in this new atmosphere. Noticing the way your shoulders slowly unlearn the tension they once held like duty. Noticing the small pleasures that appear now that there is room for them to enter. A quiet cup of tea, a full, uninterrupted thought, a moment of rest that does not require exhaustion to justify it. These are not luxuries. These are your birthright, and they become visible only when the noise clears, when the occupation ends, when the story stops demanding that you keep playing the same role just to be seen. Let this be your invitation to remain unoccupied, not forever, but long enough to hear yourself, long enough to distinguish your own voice from all the ones that used to fill your space, long enough to ask questions that are not rooted in fear but in self-trust, long enough to plant something new, even if no one else can see it yet. You are not broken. You are spacious. You are not missing. You are breathing room. You are not behind. You are only now beginning to move at your own pace. This space you're in is not loneliness. It is the honest presence of your own company. It is the return to a life that does not beg for attention to feel real. It is the quiet hum of a soul coming home to itself. You may not feel triumphant yet. You may not feel powerful. You may not even feel whole. But that is the gift of this moment. You do not need to. You do not need to become anything to be valid. You do not need to transform this silence into productivity. You only need to be here, with yourself, without the weight, without the war, without the occupation. And in time, this quiet will show you something remarkable. It will show you that your essence was never waiting to be built. It was always waiting to be revealed. Underneath all the roles, underneath all the stories, underneath all the noise, you are still here, and you always were. Now at last, there's space enough to feel it.